On June 6, 2026, a region on the Sun's surface, known as sunspot AR4461, erupted in what scientists classified as an M1.8 solar flare, an explosive release of electromagnetic energy and superheated magnetized plasma. Sunspots are areas of intense magnetic activity, darker and cooler than the surrounding surface, and they are the primary launch sites for solar flares. This particular flare was moderate in classification, but it was energetic enough to hurl a coronal mass ejection, a billion-ton cloud of plasma and magnetic field, into the inner solar system. Earth happened to be in its path. Solar physicists and space weather forecasters at NASA immediately began tracking the CME's trajectory, estimating its arrival time and likely geomagnetic impact. The countdown to a celestial light show had quietly begun. To understand how significant this event was, you need to know how scientists classify solar flares. The scale uses letters A and B represent quiet background solar activity, C denotes small flares, M marks moderate events, and X describes the most extreme, major outbursts the sun is capable of producing. Each step up the letter ladder represents a tenfold increase in energy output. This is a logarithmic scale, similar in structure to the Richter scale used for earthquakes. Within each letter class, numbers from 1 to 9 further refine the intensity. An M1.8, therefore, sits at the lower end of the moderate range. An X1 flare would be 10 times more energetic, and an X9 nearly 100 times so. This framework allows scientists and space agencies worldwide to communicate solar activity quickly and clearly, without ambiguity. The sun continuously radiates energy across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Under normal conditions, that means visible light that brightens our days, infrared radiation we feel as warmth, and ultraviolet rays that cause sunburn. But during a solar flare, the sun dramatically amplifies its output in the most energetic parts of the spectrum. A burst of X-rays travels at the speed of light, reaching Earth in just 8 minutes, and can disrupt radio communications by ionizing the upper atmosphere. Riding slightly behind, a coronal mass ejection carries enormous quantities of protons and electrons embedded in a magnetized plasma cloud. These particles, guided by their own magnetic field structure, can take anywhere from 1 to 3 days to reach Earth, depending on the ejection speed. This combination of radiation and particles is what makes solar storms a serious concern for modern technological infrastructure. When the coronal mass ejection from AR4461 finally reached Earth, it delivered what scientists described as a mild, glancing blow, meaning it struck Earth's magnetosphere at an angle rather than head-on. Despite this, the interaction was powerful enough to trigger a G3 geomagnetic storm, rated strong on the 5-level NOAA scale. Earth's magnetosphere, that invisible magnetic cocoon generated by our planet's iron core, was compressed on the sunward side and stretched dramatically on the night side. Charged solar particles funneled along magnetic field lines into the polar regions. NASA's space weather monitoring systems tracked the event in real time. It's worth noting that CERN, often mentioned in connection with particle physics, plays no role in space weather monitoring whatsoever. Its focus is entirely on Earth-based high-energy particle experiments. Space weather is NASA's domain. Under normal quiet conditions, the Aurora Borealis is confined to a ring around the magnetic poles, visible only from places like northern Canada, Alaska, Iceland, Norway, and Finland. During a G3 storm, however, that auroral oval expands significantly southward. On the nights of June 8th and 9th, 2026, the effect was dramatic. Skywatchers across Scotland, northern England, Scandinavia, and the Baltic states reported vivid, active displays. In North America, the aurora became visible across a remarkably wide swathe of the northern United States, from Washington state and Oregon in the west, through Idaho, Montana, the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, extending as far south as Illinois. For millions of people who had never witnessed the northern lights before, these 2 nights offered a genuinely accessible opportunity to step outside and look north. The colors of the aurora are not random. They are a direct readout of atmospheric chemistry and altitude. When high-energy solar particles collide with gas molecules, they excite those atoms, briefly boosting electrons to higher energy states. When the electrons fall back down, they release photons of specific colors determined entirely by the type of atom and the altitude of the collision. Oxygen at altitudes of roughly 60 to 150 miles produces the iconic bright green that most people associate with northern lights. Oxygen at higher altitudes, above 150 miles, emits a deep, blood red or crimson glow. Nitrogen contributes blue and purple hues. Viewers at mid-latitudes like Minnesota or Illinois are essentially looking up at the higher altitude atmospheric layers edge on, which is why they predominantly see that haunting crimson-red sky rather than green ribbons overhead. For someone standing in, say, Plymouth, Minnesota on the night of June 8th or 9th, the experience would have been deeply unlike anything seen in aurora photographs from Norway. Rather than vivid overhead curtains of green dancing directly above, mid-latitude observers would have turned north and seen something more ethereal and subtle. A deep, pulsing crimson-red glow rising from the horizon, like a distant fire behind the treeline. Occasionally, faint shimmering green curtains would become visible low on the northern horizon, rippling gently before fading. Higher up, hints of purple and violet might appear in moments of stronger activity. The display would ebb and flow in intensity over hours, driven by the real-time fluctuations of the geomagnetic storm. It is a genuinely different phenomenon from what polar regions experience, quieter, more mysterious, and arguably more otherworldly. Events like this June 2026 storm don't happen in isolation. They are part of the sun's natural 11-year activity cycle. We are currently in solar cycle 25, which has been tracking above initial predictions in terms of activity. As the sun approaches its solar maximum, the peak of this cycle, flares, CMEs, and geomagnetic storms are expected to become more frequent and more intense. Scientists estimate we could see further X-class events and additional mid-latitude aurora opportunities in the coming years. For everyday skywatchers, that means opportunity. For satellite operators, power grid managers, and airline navigation systems, it means ongoing vigilance. The aurora you may have seen on June 8th and 9th was not a once-in-a-generation rarity. It was a preview of more spectacular solar activity still to come. Keep watching the sky.